Hello, friends. It's Binge O'Clock, the podcast where we watch something and then we talk about it. I'm Joy Selden, and I've seen almost everything.
I'm Danielle and Joy, and I've seen almost nothing.
Except for episode 3. Except for 3 episodes of Almost Human. We can't keep doing that joke.
Well, what my brain did this time is that I said almost nothing, which is what I was supposed to say, but I almost said almost human. Because I have seen Almost Human.
Yes, you have. You have seen episode 3 called Are You Receiving?
Mm-hmm.
Which I really enjoyed this episode, even though it lost some of the spark of my synth pride.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
They're not as buddy cop as we saw in Skin.
No, it's a little bit more abrasive.
It's the first thing you notice, which is always sad.
Yeah.
So the summary of this episode is John, Kennex, and Dorian respond to a call in an office building where a security guard has died.
R.A.P. James.
And James, he was so cute. He actually looked like one of the O'Donnells.
Oh, I can see that.
I don't know if you watched Sliders and or everything else.
I've seen pictures of the things from it. I know who they are.
Good. Yes. There's going to be a lot of that talk, listeners, I think. Wait, have you seen this? Maybe. Basically, they get to the building and they find a hostage situation instead. And it turns out that it's basically a complicated way to steal a bunch of palladium from an adjacent building. And one of my favorite moments happens because, unfortunately, Dorian gets shot, but Kennex has to save him. And then Dorian returns the favor almost immediately.
Woohoo!
But we'll get to that.
We will. Dorian's superpowers are going to be a highlight of this episode.
Yes.
Because he really gets to shine in a really fun way.
I love him.
It's true. And you know what? Now that I'm thinking about it, I feel like in episode 2, Dorian / Michael Ealy was really allowed to shine in a very tragic way. And in this episode, he just gets to be as superpowered as we want him to be.
Yes. He has all the powers of the android that he is.
Yes. More powers, less trauma.
I feel like that should be on a bumper sticker.
Yeah.
More powers, less trauma. Okay, thanks. Bye.
Okay, thanks. Bye.
Okay, thanks. Bye. So what were the police unprepared for in this episode, Danielle?
Oh, man. They were wildly unprepared for almost everything they came across. Although, and we were talking about this on the B-side and kind of as we were texting each other during, I feel like the biggest thing they were unprepared for were criminals who were prepared for them.
Yes,
and it was actually, exactly, it was a lot less to do with the tech, unlike episode 2, and more just to do with criminality has gotten pretty intelligent. They understand law enforcement protocol through and through somehow, and they really took advantage of that.
Yeah, we don't learn a lot about these essentially bank robbers. Mm-hmm. They're bank robbers who are okay with killing people.
Yes.
Which, I don't know, man. I feel like if you're a bank robber, you kind of just want to get your money and go. I always feel bad when it's like a bank robber who really doesn't care if the police die or if a hostage dies or blah, blah,
yeah.
blah.
And in fact, go out of their way to kill hostages, maybe unnecessarily, I think.
It doesn't make any sense. I got the impression that somebody on the team was a previous cop or a retired cop or somebody, or someone knows someone who's a cousin of a cop. But, like, we didn't get a whole lot of background on these people.
We are not privy to that information.
Not privy to that information at all. We did get something called a light bomb.
True. We did.
I believe it was something that fires straight up.
Yes. It exploded
like if
upward.
you turned on a like you turned on a flashlight and the flashlight just went whoo.
Just in a perfect light-filled cylinder, and everything that was in that cylinder is blown up now. Oof.
Yeah, when it goes off, it's actually kind of horrifying because it's like suddenly the lobby is gone.
Gone! Yes, in a perfect circle.
In a perfect circle.
So weird.
Quote unquote perfect. It's got some like hanging bits and stuff.
Fair for fair, yeah.
It's basically a perfect circle.
They really take advantage of things like the signal jamming, for example. The cops are able to jam the signals for an entire area I mean, for an entire city block, basically, which is how the criminals are able to get into the adjacent building because signals are blocked. And so that includes, I guess, an alarm system. So the alarm system in the adjacent building doesn't go off. Seems like an oversight.
Definitely seems like an oversight. There's a moment where it's just like, you would think like an alarm to the police saying someone's stealing our stuff.
Yep.
Come get your boy.
Maybe there should be different frequencies for this sort of thing. And that, you know, things should travel along different frequencies, wavelengths, question mark.
Just like there are different frequencies for the robots, androids that work for the police force. You've done it already. You literally did the thing. You could just transfer it to this thing over here.
We know the technology exists. Maybe take advantage of it, you know? Similar to the droid that delivers the comm to the baddies up in the building as part of their hostage protocol. What if you took that exact same droid and instead of delivering a comm, you just delivered, I don't know, some knockout gas?
You could even make it look like a phone.
Make it look like a phone. Deliver some knockout gas. Save the hostages. I just, you know, there were so many ways they could have been better.
Instead, what we get is Rudy creating a completely different piece of tech to make it look like, he's like, I mean, you know, it'll pass a scan, but like, you know, basically just creating like a fake bomb. Meanwhile, I think your plan would have saved a lot more lives. Just gonna put it that way. Trying to think of what other tech there was, because again, like you said, there wasn't, there were the facemakers.
Oh, that was the big one for sure.
Yeah. The facemaker was basically a thing. It was so not subtle was the other thing. Like we've seen a lot of subtle tech.
We have.
This was not. This was like an electronic box on someone's chest that you went boop and suddenly their face was different. Basically like a little mini hologram for your face. Sci-fi fans will see this before in things like Fifth Element. There's like a whole alien race who like, our appearance is sometimes upsetting to other people, so we just boop and then we look like other people. Which is also the weirdest thing, because if you have that tech, you could have anybody pull off a heist.
Yes.
But I do think, and this was something we didn't talk about, but I now that I'm thinking about it, like, you ever see those old cop dramas from from like the 80s and 90s where it's just like they grabbed a Reagan mask?
Yeah.
Right? Or, you know, they grabbed like a Hillary Clinton mask or whatever it is. Like, and they just, you could do that with a facemaker.
Well, it's funny because I think Dorian asks that during the episode. When he finds out it's a facemaker, he goes, why not just wear masks? Which is an excellent question. And I guess it's because they weren't just trying to cover their tracks. They were trying to stall the police. Because if the police see these faces and then the police think that everyone in the building belongs to the Holy Reclamation Army, then suddenly they're going to deep dive. They're going to research the army. They're going to try and figure out what the army usually does in a crisis situation. And that's all of that is time that the criminals could spend in the adjacent building.
It actually is a pretty ingenious way to keep the cops busy. Because, again, somebody obviously understood the protocol of what they do. There is even a whole point where, well, I think one of the baddies has one of your favorite lines. But there is a whole point where Maldonado says, what's your name? And he says, well, I'd tell you, but I don't want to nullify your efforts.
Snarky, so confident.
Already understanding that, like, you're gonna find out in a minute anyway, because you got drones on me trying to facial recognition, and like, here we go. I give it, 10 seconds. And sure enough, before the call is over, they get a bead on this guy, and like, they quote unquote know who he is, when in fact he's wearing a facemaker, and he's just sending them down a different rabbit hole.
That was a confusing moment as I was watching the show for the first time, because when she calls him, I don't remember what it was, Lucas or something
Lucas.
like that. Yeah. When she calls him Lucas, I was expecting him to be rattled by that. And he wasn't rattled by it at all. He kind of does this funny smile, actually. And then, obviously now that I'm at the end of the episode, I know why he smiled and why he wasn't rattled, but it was a confusing moment while I was watching it.
Oh, for sure. Once you know what's happening, then you know what's happening, and you can kind of like go with it.
Yeah.
But before you know what's happening, it's a little bit like, like, why would you be happy about that? But then, of course, I've seen so many things where it's like, oh, of course, you want them to recognize you because you guys are like domestic terrorists, you know?
Yeah.
And like, you want the recognition, you know? And so it is a little bit of a misdirect there for the audience as well as the police precinct.
That's fair. Well, to Kennex's credit, he actually, at the end of the episode, uses the facemaker.
He does.
To turn things around.
But like, there's a name for the trope where like you find something and then you use it later in the episode.
Oh, and, I have no clue. Listeners, get at us.
Yeah, just add us with what this is called, because I can't remember what it's called. But there's definitely a moment where, and this has happened again and like, but usually it happens in sitcoms, right? Where like you circle back around to the joke.
Oh, yeah.
Like, I didn't see it coming, and I actually didn't remember. So I had a moment where I was like, oh, it's Kennex. And I was like, obviously that guy's supposed to be dead, so I'm pretty sure it's Kennex. But like, oh, I forgot he did that.
He did the thing.
He did the thing.
And I think that is most of the tech in this episode, you know, with the exception of the fission igniter, which is, by the way, megaton strong.
I mean, the episode was really about, like, Dorian.
Yes. Yeah, let's just do that. Let's talk about Dorian.
I mean, Dorian's great. But
Dorian is excellent.
Dorian's easily my top tier favorite character in the show. I feel like I have 3 that kind of rotate up
Is
there.
it Dorian, Maldonado, and Rudy?
Yeah. Depending on the moment. I'm not even going to make that suspenseful. It's just yes.
Yes. Those are the 3.
That's exactly who I'm talking about. Most of the time it's Rudy. Not going to lie. Rudy is usually a top dog up there. Just because poor Rudy, he's always in the background. But no, Dorian for this particular episode has a like many different levels to shine on. Mm-hmm. Even like we were talking about before, the relationship between them is a little bit abrasive, but like he's still able to. What was it? Kennex, they're driving and Kennex hands him like 2 wires.
Yes, to hold the wires to heat up the coffee, which any human, anyone could do. Like holding those 2 wires would heat up the coffee, right? Because it's probably like this little, I don't know, battery setup. I don't know what it is.
Which, by the way, is hilarious because it's like, aren't we in 2048? Don't you have a coffee warmer in your car?
Don't you have a coffee warmer in your car? Future tech. Future tech. We do know that John is a little less into the future tech, possibly. So perhaps this is a situation where he just refuses to. I don't know. I'm not really sure. It's unclear.
Yeah. He may have questions.
Dorian gets to casually stick his finger into John's coffee and measure the temperature of the cup of coffee. And that sort of thing is just kind of sprinkled through the episode. Dorian just casually lighting up and making things easier for everyone around him. You know, insta-transferring data to Maldonado, assessing the structure of the building and determining that it's stable enough for John and Dorian to walk up 25 flights of stairs to get to the hostage situation.
Don't they even joke at one point about like how John's not in the best shape?
Yes, I think.
But I think they talk about that at like floor 18. And I'm like, if you're talking about this at floor 18, you're doing all right.
Yeah, I think so.
I feel like you're fine. I feel like you're going to be okay.
Dorian offers to run the O course with him every weekend to get him in shape.
Bless.
What if we went on runs together?
What if we went on runs together? Dorian is also able to get to this place in the episode where, because they have this comm jammer, he's getting all the 911 calls. Mm-hmm. And I instantly, like, you have it as an instant. Well, actually, the first thing you'd have is funny, because doesn't Kennex make a joke?
At first, Dorian looks really shaken by all of the calls. Like, it's almost like when a telepathic character suddenly can't think straight because their head is full of noises. That's Dorian's first, like, whoa, something's happening. And then he has to explain it to Kennex, because I guess Kennex doesn't really understand that his partner can do that. Cool. Yeah.
Well, I mean, this is the other question, right? Like, the MX series runs on logic. So there's a lot that Dorian can do that the MX series can't.
Fair.
And I try to understand this where, like, if that was an MX, he would probably be receiving the phone calls, but then, like, I don't know, hanging up on them. Like, he couldn't exactly direct them anywhere, right?
No. Because, well, the comms were jammed. There was nowhere to direct them.
The comms are jammed. So all it would have been is, like, them talking to nobody. But because it's Dorian, and Dorian, you know, and Kennex is like, well, maybe you should answer a few of them and we can actually get some intel.
Yeah.
I think the first one was a Portuguese woman. And it was a very sweet, like, he answered in Portuguese and in a female voice. And Kennex was like, what just happened? And it's like, well, you know, studies have shown that in Portuguese culture, it's more comforting to hear from a female voice than a male voice. And then the very next call he picks up, he does I mean, we're going to call it a perfect impression of Kennex, but really it was literally voiceover of Carl Urban.
Yes, absolutely.
It's not the impression we get in Skin, which I'm pretty sure is just Michael Ealy doing a perfect Carl Urban as John Kennex impression. I might have to go back and check.
No, I think that you're right. I think that in Skin, it is still Dorian's voice. He's just copying Kennex's mannerisms. And in this episode, it is literally Carl Urban dubbing the scene.
At first, he kind of makes a joke about it, and I was like, that seems a little out of character for Dorian, actually, because he's answering 911 calls, right?
He answers by saying, I'm an automated police officer with a very difficult personality.
He does. And it's so good. Every time he does that.
You know, you're right, though. I don't think that Dorian would have answered that way, you know, within the character that we've understood him to be, because Dorian would have answered in an empathetic way and not answered with a joke.
Yeah, I do think it was played a little bit for the audience. And and again, as you and I were talking about, like, even though these episodes should have happened later, this episode still came directly after the episode we saw. So, like, Skin and Are You Receiving are still in the same broadcast order, which makes me wonder how much of that is because Dorian gave Kennex flack in the very beginning for using the olive oil.
Oh.
That has, like, made him abrasive for literally the rest of the show.
Oh.
And, like, him trying to, like, get back into his good graces by being like, it's fine, we're buddy-buddy.
Wait. Dorian has moods. He reacts like a human would. And the morning started out with Kennex being late to pick him up. Maybe they're abrasive all through this episode because Dorian's grumpy.
I didn't even think of that.
I mean, I'm literally putting that together right now as we're speaking. Live. Because I think a lot of the banter in this episode is Dorian throwing barbs Kennex's way, and Kennex doesn't really volley them back the same way that he did in Skin. Maybe Dorian's grumpy.
Maybe Dorian's grumpy.
In a bad mood. Man, you're late to pick me up. You know what I love about you? Your punctuality. That's the first line he gives says him flack.
You could kind of read it where, like, Dorian knows Kennex enough at this point to, like, know what hurts. Right?
That's true.
So he's like, maybe he's actually going for it to sting a little bit. But I mean, to move the plot along, he does pick up this call, I think in Kennex's voice specifically, so that if he has to transfer the call to Kennex, it's not jarring. Which makes sense, but it still doesn't make sense of why he would answer the call that way. But we're okay. And it's Paige. I love Paige's character. Paige is just a hostage, just trying to, like, survive. And we actually get to have a really nice, like, heart-to-heart moment with Kennex and Paige, even though, again, Dorian gives him flack for that also.
Yes,
like, he's trying to put her to sleep. But it's a very heartfelt story about, like, him falling into ice as a child and his father saving him. And that moment of, like, even though we're still in danger, I feel safe because I wasn't alone. I want you to know you're not alone. And it is a very, like, strong connection that they build, even though eventually Paige is like, yes, but my sister is out there and one of the hostages, so I'm going to have to go out there. I'm very sorry. I will keep the phone open, but I have to be with my sister.
Yeah.
Which I think is a very realistic.
Super realistic. What's almost unrealistic is how level-headed Paige is able to stay throughout this entire situation, because she doesn't even just leave the phone in the utility closet and zip into.
Which is what I thought she was going to do. And
Me too.
I couldn't remember what she actually did. And I was like, oh no.
And then she does that whole bait and switch bathroom routine where she puts the phone in the pile of other phones so it's in the center of the room and can actually pick up everything that's happening. I mean, wow. Thank goodness for Paige. If it were not for Paige, the police officers would not have successfully managed this hostage crisis. They would not. They wouldn't have.
Paige is the real MVP. I feel like I'm going to put Paige with Donna Noble from Doctor Who, where there's a lot of people who don't like Donna Noble. And I'm like, look, anyone who has worked in an office knows exactly the kind of person Donna Noble is. And they are thankful for her every day. She thinks things through. She puts things together. She has a lot of heart. We like Donna in this house. But yeah, there's definitely a kind of office personality where you're like, oh no, she's just going to get the work done. Like, she knows she's in a crisis situation and she may fall apart and she may have a moment of like vulnerability, but she's still going to get it done.
Yeah. And she did with aplomb.
And she did. And all the hubbub, I forgot, Dorian actually he doesn't get shot. He gets a ricochet, but it's horrifying because like his temple is like gashed open.
Yes.
And I actually forgot how unfortunate that was to look at.
Well, I like that Kennex is equally horrified by it. He just sees the burst of purple coming out of Dorian's head and is like, "Are you okay? But are you sure that you're okay?"
There's definitely a moment of, are you okay? And then it's like, yeah, I'm fine. Like trying to shrug it off and doing the cop thing of like, it's a ricochet, I'm okay. And then when Dorian actually has to tell him, actually, no, I'm not okay.
Yeah.
I'm going to stop being able to walk in 5 minutes. There's a moment of, oh, damn.
Oh, we're in trouble. Yep. At which point we get Kennex kind of MacGyvering the situation.
He found, and correct me if I'm wrong, a nail clipper and a Q-tip.
Yep.
And eventually a piece of gum.
Yes. Is this the everlasting through line of old school wins again? Is this that moment in this episode?
I mean, I do find it interesting that it also happens during a conversation about old school where Kennex is also talking to Paige and like they're talking about names or something. It's like Jenna's middle name was like Gertrude or something, I want to say. And Kennex is like, oh man, that's rough.
That's unfortunate, yeah.
Which I actually like the name Gertrude, but that's fine if I'm in the minority. And Paige is like, well, what's your middle name? And Kennex is like, no, we're not talking about that. And is like, no, come on. Like, I'm literally in a hostage situation. I could die at any minute. Tell me.
Maybe give me something to cheer me up.
Yeah, like, please have this conversation with me. Something that's not, the people with guns in front of me right now. And he goes, okay, but you can't tell anybody. My middle name is Reginald. And it turns out his mom was a big Elton John fan. Well, first of all, I have questions about the age of his parents.
Yes, that made me question this a little bit, too.
I know, look, I love Elton John.
Yeah.
And I know Elton John also had kind of a renaissance in the 90s. Mm-hmm. But I'm also sitting here going, your parents had to have been like millennials, maybe Gen X, maybe. But like Gen X is even almost somewhere slightly askew from what we're talking about. Like
Well, this is why he describes.
To like Elton
How does
John.
he describe Elton John again? He doesn't say old school singer, but he says something very much along that lines. He almost describes Elton John in the way that we would describe Frank Sinatra.
He does describe Elton John in this way that you and I might describe like a singer from maybe the 40s and 50s.
Yeah.
Like,
1,000%.
oh yeah, he was an entertainer and like she was really into him, right? Like he was kind of a big deal. But like there's levels of understanding how like the longevity of a performer.
Yeah.
Where like apparently it was like Elton John who? And you're like, oh.
Ah,
you should know Elton John. Don't you listen to any oldies in 2048? How eternal is music and performers just makes me a little sad.
Oh.
But that's fine.
Well, I mean, since we're on this scene, I think we've accidentally fallen into our synth pride robotic hearts update.
Synth
Because
pride.
Synth Pride. Our Dorian update for anyone who was a fan of the show while it was airing. But I feel like this little interaction between them right before Dorian passes out is so great. Their little back and forth. I mean, right before he passes out, first when Dorian says, my dynamic voltage scaling, something, something. And Kennex literally goes, you want to say that a little less complicated?
Dumb it down for me, bud.
And it's like, okay, I'm digging into your head. Cut the magenta colored tendon.
And then there's like a zap, and it's like, I said magenta. It was magenta. That was lavender.
That was the lavender one. Cue Kennex's favorite. There's 50 shades of purple in there.
Which I think is... Oh, see, now I want to do research and be like, when did 50 Shades of Grey come out?
I mean...
Oh, no. When did 50 Shades of Grey come out? Oh, no.
There are 50 shades of purple in there. I literally, as I was watching the show, all in uppercase, texted Joy, 50 shades of purple.
Well, okay, so the film came out in 2015. Mm-hmm. But when was the book? But the book should have been 2011. So yes, this technically could have been a 50 Shades of Grey joke.
This was absolutely a 50 Shades of Grey joke. I refuse to believe otherwise.
Oh, boy. And the shippers go wild.
Just like we did.
I know, the 50 Shades of Purple. Yeah, I think you did send that to me, all caps and several exclamation marks. And I was like, I know.
John just said 50 Shades of Purple, I'm dead.
We were all dead. It killed all of us. There was no surviving.
Oh, man. My other favorite moment between the two of them is when they realize that Dorian has to enter the room full of hostages and villains by himself.
The way they figured this out. And I guess this answers the, like, why weren't they taking the elevator? Because there wasn't because that is another question we had of just like, did you really have to walk up all these stairs?
Yeah, surely there was a better way.
There had to have been a better way to do this. It's basically just an elevator shaft with like the poles.
Yep.
And Dorian's like, so I'm just going to shimmy on up there and like take care of the bad guys. And Kennex is like, well, I'm coming with you. And he's like, this is literally my job.
Yes.
You can't do this. I know I can do it. I know I can do it faster.
Yep.
And Kennex is like, but you're busted.
Your head's full of bubble gum.
Yes. Did we mention that? I feel like we need to mention that. He used gum to connect the wires. The gum was to connect the wires. I also did really appreciate where he was like, is that QTip clean? And Kennex definitely pulled it out of the trash, and it was definitely not clean.
But he says that it is.
Definitely.
Yes, it is. Are you sure? I'm positive.
Positive.
Oh, man. So, yes, Dorian gets to scale up the elevator shaft like the superpowered being that he is. He gets to tell John that he's designed to do this.
Designed to do this. I mean, like,
he is. He literally is.
He, you know, whatever part of him that is meant to resemble humanity, I'm sure there's a level in there of like fear and things like that. But he also knows his own limitations.
Wait, speaking of fear, well, he enters the room, first of all. He is designed to do this because he's shot in the chest 50 million times. And
there's so many bullets.
I guess they're all just flesh wounds, ? But then we do get the moment where he's staring down the barrel of the gun, and it's revealed later that he was really scared.
Michael Ealy plays that so well, by the way. There's almost this RoboCop moment of him just getting shot a bunch, right? And like being able to take out probably more people. I mean, definitely more people than a human would have been able to take out.
1,000%.
Yeah. But probably taking out more people than maybe even an MX. Because, you know, of all the calculus going on in his brain, right? And then when he is on the ground and his legs no longer work, his gun goes flying from him and he has to like elbow crawl to try to get it. And he is...
That was heart-wrenching.
Absolutely heart-wrenching. But look at him go. He's so fast. And I was like,
scared.
How many bullets did you just pull?
At least 50.
So many bullets. 400% more bullets. Actually, this was one moment that Danielle caught where the tech from their guns is the first clue that maybe they're not as high-tech as we think they are.
Yes! Yes! Because for some reason, and I actually went back to the Skin episode to rewatch it and see whether their gun looked the same as the gun in this episode.
This is the kind of dedication we expect from our hosts on this show.
Sometimes, well, from the first minute, 2 minutes in, when they walk up to James and they're holding their guns, for some reason, silencers are a thing again. But do they not have those absorption rounds? I guess
but
not.
But not only silencers, like silencers you would see in the year of our Lord, like what, 1998?
Yes.
Like ancient relics of a time gone by.
And that should have been the police officer's first clue that this is not the Holy Reclamation Army, which is this huge organization that, I don't know, they don't really build them out too much in this episode. It is instead just kind of a ragtag group of bank robbers who have only successfully stolen things 4 times.
I mean, that's 4 times better than some other bank robbers.
Sure, that's fair. That's fair.
I mean, I don't know. Maybe it's their ability to kill people sets them above the rest.
So awful. But bringing it all back to Dorian, you know, as he was looking down the barrel of that gun, as he tells Kennex later, he felt the same way that, you know, as much as he could make fun of that ice fishing story, and he did.
He did.
Twice. He then tells Kennex that in that moment he felt the same way Kennex would have felt as he was sinking into this ice cold water. And Dorian says, you know, it's not the same with me if I die, but, and Kennex cuts him off and says, no, man, dead is dead, which I thought was a nice moment between the two of them.
Yeah, I think that's where you get the proof that this should have come after that other episode, because they are able, like they are still able to have those moments of genuine heart-to-heart conversations. I was trying to think of a better word.
Than heart-to-heart or conversations?
Than conversations.
Oh.
But like a genuine heart-to-heart conversation. We got that very established in Skin, where we got 2. And they weren't even like buttons at the end of the episode. And this one was essentially, well, close to button. It was very close to button.
Oh, but it's so cute. And we get Kennex saying, no one messes with my coffee warmer.
No one messes with my coffee warmer. Bless.
And then,
bless.
I suppose in classic Almost Human style, or what I come to understand is classic Almost Human style, we can't end on a downer like, hey, dead is dead. And so Kennex says, why don't you chuck some music on?
And it's Elton John.
And it's Elton John. It's Benny and the Jets.
It's Benny and the Jets, which I would like to point out 2 things. 1, that Dorian actually knows the words to. And 2, I would speculate that it's one of his favorite songs. Because he knows all the words and he knows the notes and he completely knows exactly where to come in and what to do.
I like that so much better than what I thought it was. I figured it was one of those Matrix Insta download things. And the minute the song was in his head, he knew it. But I like your version way better. That he knew the song previously and loves it.
You can know a song, but like the fact that you are emphatically singing along with it, and even Kennex is like, please, we're not doing that. And of course, Dorian again ignores him and just keeps singing along with the song.
Well, Kennex is just, you know, he's too tough.
Too tough for buddy car karaoke.
And that's the end of the episode. It literally ends on a Benny and the Jets car karaoke scene. It's so precious. It's perfect.
I don't know if they knew how precious they were being when they did this. I like to think they had fun doing it and that like they knew exactly what they were doing. But I mean, we'll see.
Yeah, we'll see. I think Michael Ealy and Carl Urban were probably having fun.
Yeah, for sure. They knew what they were doing. They knew what they signed up for. They were here for the ride, 100%.
And bless them, they gave us the fan service we wanted.
They did. I mean, I will always want more fan service, but I also don't necessarily enjoy pandering.
Okay. All right. Fair. I think that this show had, at least thus far, all 3 episodes of this show that I have seen, is handling that balance pretty well.
I mean, 3 out of 13 is a large number. Let's not discount that. insert some percentage here
Yeah.
of show. That was the episode.
It ends on car karaoke.
Car karaoke.
Car karaoke.
They gave us.
I can't sing it. If I sing it, do we have to pay someone some money? I'm not going to sing it.
We might. Maybe we shouldn't sing it.
We can remove it in post.
It ends on car karaoke. And it was a song that we talked about, but we did not actually sing.
Did not. Very pointedly so.
So what's one more thing? Actually, I know what your one more thing is. I'll go first.
You know what my one more thing is because I texted you about it as it was happening.
You did.
Should I go first? Since you know my one more thing.
I felt bad about it. Well, no, I like your one more thing, so we'll save that. I think my one more thing, I had a couple floating around up there trying to pick one. And I do think it's like Maldonado, like really being able to take charge, but also pivot. And I think that's important to understand, like, the good police work. And yeah, she did tell them to get out of that building, but actually at the end of the day, they probably saved a bunch of lives. Being able to understand, like, well, we're chasing these people. No, actually, we're chasing these people. And, like, trusting the people she's in charge of. Mm-hmm. And I think she did a great job in this episode.
I agree. And is not above giving him a little bit of a little bit of that elbow.
Yeah. No, she has flack for days. Flack for days on Maldonado.
I kind of love that. And here I thought you were here to thank me for what? Doing your job?
The thing you get paid to do?
All right. So my one more thing was something I was so upset about. Because the writers go out of their way to say, let's go get noodles. And they make it into a joke, too. You know, Rudy is coming up all huffy. Would you put chewing gum in a race car? And then Kennex says, well, we can deal with that later. Let's go get some noodles. And Dorian even goes, you know I don't eat, right? And Kennex goes, well, good, I'm paying. They turn it into a whole moment about them going and getting noodles. And then guess what? No noodles.
No noodles.
Again. Where are the noodles?
No noodles, too. I mean, the rule of three, right, is the next time they go for noodles, they have to eat some noodles, right? Like
they better go get some noodles. Is this when the narrator voice comes in? There were no noodles.
There were no noodles to be had. Culm District, surprisingly out of noodles. The great noodle shortage of 2048 in the Culm District.
So upsetting.
At least they weren't sitting at a counter not eating noodles. It was just carpool karaoke, and then that was it.
It was a beautiful moment to end on, I guess. I didn't... Anyway.
It's fine.
Okay, rule of three. That gives me some hope for the future. Maybe the next time.
It's been a while since I watched the series, so I can't even promise you noodles or not.
Don't promise me noodles. Don't fall into the trap where you promise me what I cannot have. But with that, I think that we've wrapped up here. We each shared the one more thing that we would like to talk about. If there's one more thing you would like to talk about, we would love to hear from you. Please check us out. I did it. That was a great segue.
Yeah, it was a great segue. Solid
segue. Please check us out. Solid segue. Please check us out at Binge O'Clock Pod on Twitter and Facebook, where you can absolutely tell us about your one more thing. Or, here's the question we had prepared. There are 50 shades of purple. What is your favorite shade of purple? You can also answer that question by emailing us at bingeoclockpod@gmail.com.
Yes, and tell your friends, tell your family, tell your loved ones, tell the coffee warmers in your life about Binge O'Clock, and we will see you next time.